You know that feeling when you're lying in bed at night and your brain just won't shut off? You're staring at the ceiling, running through everything you didn't get done today, everything you should have done differently, everything you're supposed to figure out tomorrow. And there's this weight on your chest. Not a physical thing. It's more like the accumulated weight of all the versions of yourself that you haven't become yet. I've been there. I think most of us have. You wake up, you go through the motions, you tell yourself that tomorrow you're going to make that change, start that project, have that hard conversation. And then tomorrow comes and it feels exactly like today. And you start wondering if maybe this is just who you are now. Maybe that ambitious person you used to be, the one with all the plans and the fire, maybe they're gone. Maybe they were never really real. Here's the thing I need you to understand before we go any further. And I'm not saying this to be dramatic or to hype you up. I'm saying this because it's actually true. What I'm about to walk through, the changes we're talking about, they're real. They're not magic. They're not some secret that only a few lucky people are born with. These abilities, the focus, the drive, the ability to actually do the hard thing instead of just thinking about it, these are things that human beings can develop with effort, with repetition, with consistent training.
But here's the part that matters, and I want you to really hear this. Understanding something is not the same as executing it. You can watch 100 videos, read 50 books, listen to every podcast on the planet about how to change your life, and you'll know all the information. You'll be able to explain it to other people. But that knowledge by itself does nothing. It's like having a map of the gym while you're sitting on your couch. The map didn't make you stronger. Knowing is easy. Doing is the part that trips us up. And it's not because we're stupid or lazy or broken. It's because doing involves all the messy, personal, emotional stuff that the information doesn't account for. The fear, the self-doubt, the exhaustion after a long day, the voice in your head that says, "Who do you think you are?" Knowledge lives in your brain. Action lives in your body. And those are two very different places.
So let's be honest with each other from the start. I can give you the blueprint. I can show you how this works, but I cannot do the work for you. Nobody can. That part, the hard part, that's yours. And that's actually good news, because it means the power is yours too. I remember a time in my life when I felt completely stuck. I was working hard, I was showing up, I was doing all the things you're supposed to do, late nights, early mornings, grinding away, and nothing was moving. I felt like I was running on a treadmill, burning energy, but going nowhere. And the people around me, they seemed to have figured it out. They had the jobs, the relationships, the sense of purpose. They cracked some code that I couldn't even find.
And I started asking myself questions I'd never asked before. Not the usual, what am I doing wrong, but deeper ones. Is this even for me? What if I'm not meant to have the things I want? What if I'm just not built for success? Those questions are dangerous, because once you start asking them, your brain starts looking for evidence to prove they're true, and it will find it. Your brain is really good at finding what it's looking for. Here's what I learned. When you're in that place, when you're wandering around in the dark, overthinking every decision, questioning whether you have what it takes, you're not actually seeing reality clearly. You're seeing your fear reflected back at you. You're looking through a window smudged with all the doubts and frustrations you've been carrying, and you're mistaking that smudged view for the truth. We get attracted to things that look good from the outside. We see people on social media, we see them walking down the street, we see the way they dress, the cars they drive, the confidence they project, and we think, I want that. I want to be like them. We look at someone with a fit body, someone with a successful business, someone who seems to have their life together, and we wish we could have what they have.
But here's a question. Do you actually know how they got there? Did you sit down with them and hear the whole story? The years of struggle, the nights they wanted to quit, the failures they don't post about, the doubts they still feel? Or are you just attracted to the surface, looking through a window at someone else's life, imagining that the inside looks as good as the outside, when you have no idea what's actually going on in there? I'm not saying you shouldn't admire people. I'm not saying you can't learn from those who've gone before you. But there's a difference between learning and copying. There's a difference between being inspired and trying to duplicate someone else's life. You weren't born to be a rerun. You were born to be an original. And the moment you stop trying to fit yourself into someone else's mold is the moment you start to discover what you're actually capable of.
My father used to tell me something that I didn't understand for a long time. He'd say, "Don't be like me, be better than me. I made my bed, now you go make yours."
At first, I thought he was being humble, or maybe even distant, but later I understood. He was telling me that my life wasn't supposed to be a copy of his. My purpose, my path, my identity, that belongs to me, and no one can take that away. But also, no one can give it to me. I have to claim it myself. So how do you do that? How do you stop being stuck and start becoming who you're supposed to be? How do you move from wanting to change to actually changing? That's what we're going to walk through. And I'm going to show you the practical side of this. Not just the motivation, not just the inspiration, but the actual mechanics of how this works. Let's start with something that might feel uncomfortable. Think about your average day. Think about how you spend your time and ask yourself an honest question. Why can you sit and scroll through your phone for 2 hours without even noticing the time pass, but you can't focus on a single chapter of a book that could actually improve your life? Why can you watch an entire season of a show in one weekend, but getting yourself to work out for 20 minutes feels like you're climbing a mountain?
Now, most people will tell you that the answer is discipline, that you're lazy, that you don't have enough willpower. I don't think that's true. I think the problem is deeper and also more fixable than that. The problem is that your brain has been trained, and it's been trained by the environment we all live in now. Every time you get a notification, every time you scroll and see something new, every time you get a like or a comment, your brain releases a little bit of dopamine. That's the chemical that makes you feel good, that makes you want more. And here's the thing, your brain doesn't care where the dopamine comes from. It doesn't judge. It doesn't say, oh, this dopamine came from accomplishing something meaningful, so I'll save it for later. No, dopamine is dopamine. And if you spend your days flooding your system with easy hits, with cheap pleasure, with constant stimulation, your brain adapts. It's called homeostasis. Your body always wants to stay balanced. So if you give it too much pleasure, it creates pain to balance you out. That's why after a whole day of doing nothing but consuming, you feel empty. That's why after hours of scrolling, you feel anxious. Your brain is trying to bring you back to equilibrium by giving you a dose of discomfort. And over time, something else happens. Your dopamine receptors get desensitized. You need more and more stimulation just to feel normal. The first video was exciting. The 100th is boring. But you keep scrolling because your brain is addicted to the movement, to the novelty, not even to the pleasure anymore.
Meanwhile, the things that would actually build your life, the hard things, the meaningful things, they feel impossible. Not because they're actually that difficult, but because your reward system is so out of whack that you can't feel the satisfaction that comes from real effort anymore. You've broken your brain. And I mean that in the most literal, neurological sense. You've trained your brain to expect easy pleasure, and now it rebels when you ask it to do something that requires work. So how do you fix it? How do you recalibrate? This is where we get practical. The first step is something called dopamine fasting. And I know that sounds like Silicon Valley buzzword nonsense, but it's actually real neuroscience. The idea is simple. You create periods of time where you intentionally remove the sources of cheap dopamine. No social media, no junk food, no constant entertainment, just you and your thoughts and maybe some simple activities. When you do this, something interesting happens. Your brain, which is used to constant stimulation, gets bored. And boredom is uncomfortable. But boredom is also where your brain starts to reset. After a day or two, things that seemed boring before start to feel interesting again. A walk outside becomes genuinely pleasant. Reading a book becomes engaging. Having a conversation without checking your phone feels richer. Not because the world changed, but because your brain recalibrated. It remembered how to get dopamine from real experiences instead of just from cheap hits.
Now, I'm not telling you to eliminate all pleasure from your life forever. That's not realistic, and it's not healthy. But you need windows of time where your brain remembers what normal feels like, where it's not being constantly flooded. Start small. Maybe it's the first hour of your morning. No phone, no screens, just wake up slowly. Maybe it's your lunch break. Actually eat your food without watching something. Maybe it's one full day on the weekend where you disconnect. The point isn't to suffer. The point is to let your brain reset so that when you go back to doing things that matter, you can actually feel the reward. Here's the next piece, and this one changes everything. There's a concept called liminal friction. That's a fancy way of saying the amount of energy it takes to start something. And here's what most people don't understand. Willpower is a limited resource.
it runs out. You can't rely on it to make good decisions all day. By the evening, your willpower is depleted and you make the easy choice every time. So instead of fighting that, instead of trying to be more disciplined, you design your environment so that the good choice has less friction and the bad choice has more. Let me give you concrete examples.
You want to read more, but you always end up on your phone. Don't try to have more willpower. Put your phone in another room. Put the book on your pillow. Now when you get in bed, grabbing the book takes zero effort. Getting your phone requires getting up and walking to get it. The friction is higher. You'll read the book. You want to work out in the morning, but you always hit snooze. Sleep in your workout clothes. Put your shoes right next to the bed. Now when the alarm goes off, getting up and moving is the path of least resistance. Going back to sleep requires you to change clothes, to move the shoes, to make a conscious decision. You'll get up. See how this works? You're not fighting your brain. You're designing the battlefield so your brain doesn't have a choice. You're making the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard. And that matters more than motivation ever will. But here's the thing. Even with low friction, even with good design, you're going to hit a wall. I call it the pain wall. It's that moment, usually a few minutes into any hard task, where your brain starts screaming at you to stop. It's when you're running and your lungs start burning. It's when you're working on something difficult and every sentence feels like pulling teeth. It's when you're studying and your mind keeps wandering to anything else.
Most people stop here. They think the pain means something's wrong. They think if it's this hard, they must not be cut out for it. But here's what neuroscience actually shows. That pain wall is exactly where the change happens. It's called neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to physically rewire itself. And it's not a metaphor. It's literal. When you've pushed through the discomfort, your brain starts creating new connections. You are literally rebuilding your mind in real time. But you have to cross the wall. If you stop right at the point of pain, nothing changes. Your brain stays exactly the same. The growth happens on the other side. So how do you get through it? There's a technique called effort anchoring. Most people try to motivate themselves by thinking about the end result. When I finish this, I'll feel good. But that's future dopamine. Your brain can't feel that right now when it's hurting. Effort anchoring works differently. You train your brain to release dopamine during the pain, not just after. You do this by changing what you say to yourself. When you feel the burn, instead of thinking, "This is horrible, I want to stop," you think, "This hurts, and that's why it's good. This pain means I'm growing." You smile while it hurts, literally smile. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but studies show that smiling during effort releases dopamine immediately. You're tricking your brain into associating the pain with reward.
And if you do this enough times, something shifts. You start to seek out the pain. You crave it because your brain has learned that on the other side of that discomfort is real satisfaction. You become addicted to doing hard things, not because you're a masochist, but because you've retrained your reward system. Now, let's be real about what this takes. I'm not going to tell you it's easy. I'm not going to tell you the voice in your head will ever completely shut up. There's always going to be a negotiation. Part of you, the rational adult part, says, "Get up, do the thing, this matters." And another part, the emotional child part, says, "5 more minutes, we'll do it later, we're tired." Even the most disciplined people in the world have that conversation. The difference is they already know who's going to win. It's not a question. It's a decision they made a long time ago. They don't wait to feel like doing the hard thing. They just do it because their identity is already defined. And that brings me to the deepest shift of all. Stop saying, "I'm going to try to exercise." Start saying, "I'm someone who works out." Stop saying, "I should read more." Start saying, "I'm a reader." Stop saying, "I need to work on my project." Start saying, "I build things."
Do you see the difference? One is a temporary action. The other is who you are. And when you change your identity, your actions follow automatically. You don't need motivation. You're just being yourself. This is what we're really talking about. It's not about grinding harder. It's not about toxic hustle culture. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't have to fight themselves every step of the way. It's about aligning your environment, your habits, and your identity so that the right thing becomes the natural thing. Let me give you a quick summary of everything we've covered. Your brain has been trained by cheap dopamine to avoid effort and seek easy pleasure. That's not a moral failing. It's just what happens when you live in a world designed to capture your attention. The solution isn't more willpower. It's better design. Reduce the friction for things that matter. Increase the friction for things that don't. Accept that you're going to hit a pain wall. Smile when you do, because that's where the growth happens. Anchor your reward to the effort itself, not just the outcome. Learn to love the process, not just the prize. And most importantly, change your identity. Stop trying to do hard things. Become someone who seeks challenges.
Look, the easy life makes you weak. The hard life makes you strong. And at some point, you have to choose which one you want. Not just in theory, not just in your head, but in how you actually live your days. Do you want to be someone who always took the easy path and woke up at 40 wondering what happened to all those dreams? Or do you want to be someone who embraced the discomfort, who crossed the wall, who rebuilt their brain and became the person they always knew they could be? The choice is yours, but I can promise you this. On the other side of the pain is a version of you that you haven't met yet, and they're waiting for you to show up. So here's what I want you to do. Start tonight. Not tomorrow, not Monday, not when you feel ready. Tonight. Pick one thing, just one. Maybe it's putting your phone in another room when you go to sleep. Maybe it's laying out your workout clothes. Maybe it's deciding that tomorrow morning for the first hour, you're not going to look at a screen. Just one small thing that moves you in the right direction.
And when it gets hard, when your brain starts negotiating, when you hit that wall, smile. Literally smile and say to yourself, this is where it happens. This is where I become who I'm supposed to be. I'll be right there with you, doing the same thing. Because this isn't a one-time fix. It's not a secret hack. It's a way of living. It's choosing over and over to be the person who does the work. So go ahead, take that first step. I'll see you on the other side.